I'm Bob Kraus, and I'm here today with Judge Todd Deck. And why we're here is because we want to do something about veterans courts. Post 9/11 wars wound down in 2006, 2007, 2008, and there were a lot of veterans coming back. A lot of justices across the country realized that something was wrong. Veterans were getting in trouble, they were getting thrown in jail, but the veterans that were getting in trouble and thrown in jail were veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, severe depression, traumatic brain injury, things that were invisible wounds that were destroying their lives. Why take these people and throw them in jail instead of getting treatment? In 2008 was when the Chief Justice of Kansas wrote his article. It resulted in a model law being created by the Uniform Laws Commission, which is a national voluntary organization. And it was rapidly adopted in many states. In 2016, there were about 400 or so of these courts that were created. In 2022, there's about 625 or so that have been created. But here in Iowa, we're not doing so well. We have one pioneer here. We have Judge Todd Deck, who, out of his own cloth, created Iowa's first veterans court, and he did so administratively. And it's been working for a while, but we have all those counties, 98 other counties, that do not have a veterans court and really have only one option if a veteran with invisible wounds comes to court, and that is to use the law and not rehabilitation. So, Judge, I'd like to thank you for what you've done and get your story about what you saw and what caused you to create this veterans court, the kind of people you've got coming in to use it, and what do you think the results have been, both good and bad?
Thank you for talking with me. I think it's an important issue. You used the term pioneer, and I don't think of myself necessarily that way. I see myself more as a torchbearer for a few reasons. First, I did not start the Woodbury County Veterans Treatment Court. It was started by Judge Jeffrey Polson, and it was his passion. He's sadly passed away in the last few weeks, and so we just had a celebration of life for him, and had many things said about his passion for this project and for this court. He started it, and it took him a lot of work and hard work and a lot of time and collaboration with a lot of people in order to be able to get the court up and running. He was nearing retirement and was looking for someone to pass the torch to, and that was me. He asked me if I would, and I was very happy to say that I would. So I took the court over at that point and have been the presiding judge for that court ever since.
Okay, so but you were in Woodbury County at the time Judge Polson was creating this court.
Yes.
And so you probably saw many of the same things that he did with Woodbury County veterans that ran into trouble with the law. What did you see?
So I've seen it from both sides because as a practicing attorney, I did a lot of criminal defense work. And I had veterans who had difficulties with the law. And what I saw from that perspective were individuals who accepted responsibility for their actions. They were often hesitant to even admit that there was some underlying reasons that may have driven their behavior or at least contributed to it that should be addressed. And oftentimes those are in the form of substance abuse or mental illness, or through some sort of behavioral changes resulting to injuries, even just the stress related with that. Post-traumatic stress disorder is obviously very common, and then effects of traumatic brain injuries and things of that nature. So I represented several veterans in that role as a criminal defense attorney. And it didn't seem to me at that time, and I talked with Judge Polson, he and I were close and talked about these sorts of issues when he was creating the Veterans Court, that those underlying issues weren't being addressed, and that there had to be a better way to do it that was more suited to the problems that were driving the behavior, but also that was more suited to the individuals and their background that were engaging in the criminal behavior or getting themselves in situations that they needed some assistance in getting out of. So I think he and I both saw those issues, and that there was a path forward. And that's when he then put everything together for this court. And it took a lot of people. These courts don't exist in a vacuum. It takes the cooperation of the courts, cooperation of law enforcement, cooperation of the probation officers, cooperation of the Veterans Administration, cooperation of social work folks in the community, and mental health professionals and substance abuse professionals in the community. Defense attorneys have to be involved. So it's not something that can just be done by the court. It's something that takes a community to come together and make happen. And so, having seen those issues, he was able to get those people together, and he was lucky to have some county attorney, Terry Gansel, who was also a veteran and had a great passion for the court as well to help get it going. Then they had to have some training, so they had to find a way to get some training, and he was able to do that. And that's obviously very important to these types of courts, so that the people involved know what it is that they're dealing with and how best to address it. So taking all of those things that he saw as issues and knowing that there was probably a better solution, he started this court, and I sort of followed along on the sidelines and as it was created, and seeing it come together, and it was a very rewarding experience to see him be able to pull that off. And I say pull it off because he did it on his own, and we continued to do it greatly on our own. The judges that are involved, well, me and Judge Polson in this court, and in the other problem-solving courts that we have in this state, whether it's a drug court or something of that nature, those judges aren't paid any more than other judges. They don't generally use court time for that. They do it over their lunch hour or do it in the evenings. Our Veterans Treatment Court we do over the lunch hour so that we're not interfering with other court business. So it's something that the court system and a lot of people in the community have sort of gone above and beyond and doing things they don't have to do. Nobody involved in the Veterans Treatment Court, including the participants, have to be there. Everyone has made that decision and that choice to be involved.
That's wonderful. Bringing all those, that's a lot of threads to pull together. And then once you got them pulled together, they got to be renewed and replenished. You got personnel changes and such like that. So it does require a critical mass. Sioux City is a fairly good-sized town. Woodbury County is a fairly good-sized community. As you get to be a smaller county and a smaller jurisdiction, it might be more difficult, and there might need to be additional support given from the state judicial system in terms of money or coordination research to make it all done, right?
Absolutely, and not just from the judicial system, from the legislative branch and from the executive branch. When you look at probation officers that are involved, and they're doing double duty when they're working with these types of courts. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost necessary that you have some type of case coordinator or someone that's dedicated to working in these types of courts that has more specific training to that. Mm-hmm. Because then you don't have as much overturn in individuals involved, but also you're not asking people to do double duty or to do more than they otherwise would have to do.
Can you just tell a little bit about, from a personal perspective, what you've seen, successes and failures?
Sure. So a number of particular successes always stick out in my mind, but one of them was a veteran who at the time of entering the program was homeless and without a job, and had gotten himself into some trouble because he had gotten into drugs and alcohol in ways he shouldn't have. And throughout the program, by the end of it, he was housed, he had stable housing, stable employment that he really enjoyed, and he just made a complete turnaround. And what did that was addressing those underlying things, because his criminal behavior was mostly self-harming. I mean, he wasn't stealing or being violent towards other people. He was harming himself through his own actions. And so by addressing those issues, you were able to sort of free him from that. And also, one of the things that you see a lot in Veterans Treatment Court is sort of getting them over that hurdle of admitting that it's okay to get help and that it's okay to need help, because so much of their personality, I think, to begin with, but also their training is, to take care of other people, take care of us, and take care of our freedoms, and to come back and let us take care of them a little bit is a difficult thing for many of them.
Yeah. That's a powerful statement. Now, I want to ask more about that, but what would have been the alternative had you not put that gentleman through the court? Would he have wound up in the prison system?
At his level, he probably would not have ended up in the prison sentence in that prison system in that particular case, but certainly was on a path there. But had he not been in the Veterans Treatment Court, he probably would have spent a little bit of time in the county jail and gone back to his life as it was.
And it could have escalated, and probably would have.
Certainly could have, yeah.
Okay. Do you have another one like that?
So we've had, a lot of success. We've had 33 graduates from our program, and that's above an 80% graduation rate.
What's the normal recidivism rate in prisons?
I couldn't tell you, but I know it's a lot. The success rate is a lot lower than 80%.
Yeah, so you only had 80% success, 20% fell off the wagon, 20% recidivism on that program.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's recidivism. It might just have been that they weren't able to complete the program, and so then they suffered some additional consequences for their prior behavior and moved on. They didn't necessarily go on to commit additional crimes, although we have had those instances where, and I think it's sort of and it's a problem in any type of supervision situation, that when the supervision ends,
what do?
They have to make a choice for themselves as to how they act going forward. And I think that we give them the tools through our court to stay connected, because they can stay connected with the VA, they can stay connected with the other individuals in the community that are part of our panel. And so,
but nevertheless, an 80% success rate for any social program is astounding.
It's impressive, and it's particularly impressive, I think, because our program is generally close to 2 years long. And we have individuals in our program who, had they wanted to, they could have probably just done 2 or 7 days in jail and been done and not had to do anything else, just moved on with their lives. But they choose to take on this challenge because I think that they know that there might be some help there. And so sometimes there's a misconception that these types of courts are preferential or giving better treatment to certain individuals over other individuals, and it's not that at all. I would say in a majority of our cases, the work that it takes to get through our program and to do it successfully is a lot more work than it would take them just to be on normal probation or to just have taken an upfront jail sentence or something.
So you have somewhere in these veterans' minds, they know that there's a better person within them. And so the veteran court reaches out and say, let's have your better person come out. And that is, and when you find that person that has that desire, it springs up and it's a big win.
It does, and it is a big win, and it's really rewarding to see those changes as they occur. And it's not everyone's the same, but there are certain patterns that you often see as folks come into our program. They're reluctant at first, and then they maybe do something that violates the rules of the program or that violates their probation, and we have instant and effective ways of dealing with that. If someone, for example, had a positive drug test, when we get together on our Friday for our drug court meeting, the sheriff's deputy is here and says, "You're coming with me. We're going to go across the street for a couple of days in the jail because there has to be consequences." So there are more consequences, I think, present doing this program than there otherwise could be.
So anytime you pop positive, it's at least a couple days in jail.
Yes.
And so that's a pretty good incentive. But it's not like you're kicked out of the program because you're pop positive. It's that you went there, so there was at least a nominal degree of punishment so you could get the guy back on the way.
Yes, and we have graduated degrees of consequences, and what we've done, for example, if you don't show up when you're supposed to, or something more minor, we might have you do some community service at the American Legion or at some other organization and put in some time there, and then if something happens again, or if something worse than that happens, then we have a jail sentence that can be effective, and I find is very, very effective. And then at the far end of the spectrum, if they're just not right for the program, they are also on probation and generally have either a suspended sentence that they're kind of is being held over their head, or if they had maybe a deferred judgment or a deferred prosecution type of situation, there's something else over their head that if they don't do this program, they may go to prison. We have individuals in the program that if they were kicked out, that's where they would go, unless they went to some intermediate sanction like the residential treatment facility or something. But it doesn't work for everyone, but it seems to me that it works very well, and that the way that we have our court structured works very well, particularly for veterans.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to extrapolate now to try to identify statewide what might be the benefit. Of course, if somebody lives in Sioux City and they commit a crime down in Council Bluffs, they may not have the benefit that if they committed the crime here in Sioux City. And people are mobile, so you've got a kind of an exponential benefit that I see. What you as the judge working with law enforcement, what do you see as either substantial or the civic benefits that would come if something like this went statewide?
So I think you're absolutely right about the geography situation. Because we are in this area, that limits who we can serve. Now, we have done the best we can to serve who we can if they want to be. And so we've had individuals in the program from Lyon County and Sioux County and Plymouth County and some other counties, up to an hour and 15 minutes away. Those individuals drive down here for every time we have a meeting and for their whole 2-year term, and they participate. We have an individual now who got in trouble in Wisconsin. They didn't have a veterans treatment court there. He lived in a county in Iowa that didn't have a veterans treatment court, that was farther east in the state, and but he wanted to do our program. And so he got the court in Wisconsin to order that he complete our program as part of his probation there. He moved and transferred to Iowa, and then he moved from where he was to the Sioux City area just so he could take part in our program.
Wow, that's a believer.
It is.
How did he know about that?
Well, I don't know how he initially found out about it.
Yeah.
And I think it just illustrates that there's a need out there, and there are people out there that are willing to do these programs.
Yeah, not very many people will travel 400 miles and move just to be punished.
Correct, exactly. But had there been treatment court there that he could have been involved in, either where he lived or somewhere closer, that would have not only benefited him and made that, but the other people in that area that might benefit from the program. And also then the community, I think, benefits, because these folks are hardworking people, and they come out of it as a lot of them as very productive members of society. I mean, these are people who have seen and had to take part in things that most people just can't really understand. And for them to be able to have help to focus that training into productive things is great for the community.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of PTSD in my life. My father had PTSD from World War II in the Pacific, and would have night terrors, that were fairly violent. And his mom and dad slept in separate rooms because she was fearful of what he might do in his night terrors. And in the military, one of my stories of PTSD, I was a company commander over in Sioux City, and one of my sergeants disappeared one Sunday morning, and we didn't know where he was, hunted all over, and finally, towards the end of the day, one of the other soldiers saw his feet sticking out from under a 5-ton truck. And what had happened, he'd been a tunnel rat in Vietnam. And he had gone into an hallucination where he saw a Viet Cong underneath this truck in a tunnel, and the Viet Cong was armed, and so was he, but he couldn't move forward or backward. So he froze. And he was down there for approximately 8 hours under that truck until somebody pulled him out by the feet, and that snapped the recollections that he was going through. And so we brought it up. They brought him to me, and he explained what had happened. He was very embarrassed about it. And I turned to one of my other sergeants and I says, "Have you ever seen anything like that?" And he says, "Sure, it happens to me all the time." And his story was he was a truck driver driving out of Da Nang, and as he drove out, a mortar round from a Viet Cong mortar landed on the guy that was guarding the gate and splattered him on the windshield, this red flash. And so he said he would drive down the road, and every 2 or 3 times a week, in a salesman job, his windshield would go red. He'd pull over and wait for it to go away, and then he'd drive home. But other people would use the bottle, other people would do drugs. We've seen a lot of it. And it kind of, what you're doing is very, very good. I've seen the pain in these people. You've seen the pain in these people. And anything we can do to break that cycle that was created by their acts of heroism and joining the military and fighting for America, we need to do. And I think with that, if you have something to wrap it up, I'm sold, Judge. I really am.
Well, I would just wrap up by saying thank you. I want to piggyback a little bit on what you're saying, and sort of what you said in the opening. We talk about getting further away from the post 9/11 wars. People ask me, what's the relevance of these courts, and will they remain relevant? And I think the answer is that they will, and I think that for a couple of reasons, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And another reason, though, is our oldest participant, who actually just graduated, was over 70 years old. And so our participants aren't just folks that got out of the service, last week or last year or 10 years ago. We've had folks from the 70s through the 80s, through the 90s, and through the 2000s, 2010s, and now into the 2020s. And so the need is going to stay there for a long time, because there are a lot of folks now that are dealing with things that might not manifest themselves until farther down the road.
You're right on that. Yeah, it's sporadic, or it can be sporadic. You can live a normal life for years, and then something will set you off. It might be 4th of July fireworks. It might be somebody asks you a question that forces you into that little time slot. There's many things that will do it, and when it happens, it's very unpredictable what your actions may be. We're dealing with a veteran in one of our interviews who's 68 years old, and he's got PTSD from some violence actually between the wars, but it was violent, and it's ruined his life. Because he keeps going to those situations that you were talking about, where it's a little bruise, a little slap and a lick, and all of a sudden he's in trouble with the law. And so I can see a lot of people being very grateful, and their families being very grateful, if we do in Iowa and in other states just what you advocate here. And so, Judge, with that, I'd like to once again thank you.
Thank you.
You may not say you're a pioneer, but you are a pioneer.
Thank you.
And we'd never be where we were if it weren't for the pioneers who got us there in the first place. So, I'm Bob Kraus. I'm president of the Veterans National Recovery Center. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to ask you to call your local state legislator and your governor and ask them to please, please, please move forward with the Model Veterans Treatment Court Act. And if you do that, someday we'll be doing this wonderful thing for war-injured veterans with invisible wounds, and you won't regret it, and neither will our society. Thank you.